New prospects rankings, and the Cubs rank high once again, but does it matter?
You are Locked On Cubs, your daily Chicago Cubs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Cubs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Alongside Sam Olber, I'm Matt Cozy. Sam and I are lifelong fans, taking our passion into a discussion with you on all things Cubs. Thank you for being part of the show and making us your first listen today. And the best way you can help us grow the show is to listen every day, like the video, and comment anything below. Today's episode is presented by Booking.com. Booking.yeah, the right state can make you a fan of any city, even your baseball rivals. Book today on Booking.com, the official accommodation partner of Major League Baseball, and get the Booking.com app today. MLB Pipeline released their new prospect rankings last week, and 8 Cubs players are in the top 100, and 7 are in the top 73. Matt Shaw is the highest rated of the group at number 22. Then it is Owen Casey at 34, Cade Horton 42, Moises Ballesteros 44, James Triantos 55, Kevin Alcantara, we saw for a few games towards the end there, 67, Cam Smith all the way up to 73, and Jefferson Rojas, who I know the littlest about, is exactly 100th. My questions here are, so who out of this group is going to have a major impact? I think there's really 3 categories: major impact, contributor, and then who will be traded. Sam, where do you rank right now in terms of the farm system that, okay, has clearly been rebuilt, but in terms of how it relates to eventually helping at the major league level? Because I'm a little, I guess, for the lack of a better word, I'm kind of tired of the prospect rankings. Where are you at with this right now?
I'm tired as well. To answer the question at the open, does it matter? The answer is yes. However, it matters if you make it matter. If you do something about it. What I mean by this is this.
Yeah.
The Cubs, forget expectations. Just if you put the Cubs in a simulation where you don't know the team and you just say this: 83 wins back-to-back years, and 7, 8 guys, whatever it is, in the top 100. That is a very healthy situation. It's a very good situation because you either could have those guys come up and contribute, or you could do the AJ Preller with the Padres formula of continue to produce guys and then trade them for big-time names when it's time. But the Cubs have kind of backed themselves in a corner because they're an 83-win team with no openings. And so when you have no openings, number one, you don't have room for a Casey. You don't have room for some of these other guys at Alcantara or whatever to blossom, right? And I get it. Jed talked about depth, but you can't have that much depth. You can't have this much talent and still be producing 83 wins. So the other way to go is in trades. But again, if you make trades, even if you're going to trade for a big bat, you would have to include at least 1, if not 2, current major league roster guys, unless, of course, Cody Bellinger opts out. And that's why Jed Hoyer and the murmurs around the league are, wow, Jed really wants Cody Bellinger to opt out because he has all this prospect currencies, all this prospect capital to trade and all these assets, and he needs an opening. We don't know who's on the trade market. We know we would love for the Cubs to get Juan Soto. We don't know if they can. But there's talent, there's room to upgrade, and these guys are all great trade partners for teams, but you need to be able to get a guy that could come in here and play. I think what they're going to do, to answer the second part of your question, I think Matt Shaw's not going anywhere. I think he's going to find a way to play this year. And then I think they're probably going to double down because one place they don't have to worry about removing guys is trade some of these guys for some pitchers and really double down on that as their strength. We keep talking about the Cubs are going to add a starter. Maybe they add 2. Maybe they go in next year with a Steele, Imanaga, Tyone, add rotation. And then that pushes Brown to the pen, pushes Wicks to the pen, doesn't rush Cade Horton. We know we don't really trust Assad that much. But I think Shaw's probably a guy that's not going anywhere. I think they're going to be really patient with Ballesteros, would be my guess, because he's still young, learn how to catch. I think everybody else, if you're trying to win right now, is fair game. And Jed has to get creative and figure out a way to get a blockbuster deal and turn these prospect capitals, these top 100 guys, into wins on the baseball field.
Yeah, I think Shaw, Ballesteros, and Smith have the most upside, or they're just the most exciting. Ballesteros, by the way, is playing in the Arizona Fall League. I have a couple notes on that later this segment. I do think, as I do some of my free agency target homework for later this month or November, or really whenever, I just don't. I have trouble even penciling in like a name like a Tanner Scott or Kenley Jansen or Carlos Estevez from the Phillies, because the Cubs free agent pursuits in the relief corps has only been 1 or 2 year deals. And so if they really want to trade for a closer, for example, this winter, who has multiple years of control remaining, then guess what? You're able to do that with one of these ranked prospects, in my opinion, plus 2 or 3 other players. You mentioned a starting pitcher. I think that's possible. 1 or 2 of these names plus 2 or 3 others, you have a starting pitcher. And I don't see why this offseason wouldn't be the time to do that, especially given where all these guys or most of these guys are at, which is AAA or knocking on the door of the big leagues, aside from Smith and Rojas, just at least in this top 8 group. And so I really hope that they do that to get better and actually build in a value for value deal, because if all these guys are truly blocked, then get someone who can have impact. That's part of what that currency conversation last week was about. It's like, well, okay, you got the farm system to a really healthy place and then some, congrats. But now no one actually, we don't see anybody ever. We don't hear from anyone. So that would be nice to see, a trade for a closer or something like that. And I don't see why, especially with these guys just almost being in a holding pattern, or really not almost, they are. I really hope that, we get a notification in December at the winter meetings and something like that happens. And I understand that it might hurt a little bit, okay, to see these names that we've grown to see time and time again, but that's part of the biz.
Yeah, I think a couple things. I think number one, I think the Cubs' lack of a star or their roster balance really hurts them in this case, because it's so hard for them to open up a spot for either an external player or a player coming up, because all these guys are basically the same. They're all just nice baseball players. So how do you decide which one to part ways with? Is it Bush? Is it Paredes? Is it Horner? Who is it? And then you have no trade clauses on the corner of your outfield spot. So you're really waiting on pins and needles for that Bellinger decision. And that's why that Bellinger decision, we've always kind of leaned, I think it'd be better for the team if he opts out, because it's not even about him. It's about the Cubs have so many assets. They have things. They just need the space to use them. As far as the closer thing or the bullpen thing, I agree. I would love for the Cubs to spend their capital on improving it. I'm just not sure I trust them to get that right. We don't know, outside of Emmanuel Clase, who out there do we really feel like, all right, so we trade or we acquire Tanner Scott. That'd be great. Would we absolutely be shocked if April 20th he's completely forgot how to pitch? These relievers, the up and down element of them, and Jed's even said this, like, it's their responsibility to build that internally. They failed. So now, Hector Neris was a failure. David Bednar was a guy that we were pounding the table for to try and trade. He cost the Pirates as many games, if not more, than Alzolay this year. It's such a dangerous market to try and predict. So if Jed's going to use I'm going to use the phrase precious prospects, because we know how much he values them. I would be slightly surprised if he used that on a reliever or two, unless it's really, really impossible to question their success, which we're talking about maybe like the Clase level or, something like that. But to me, the biggest challenge right now for the Cubs in this offseason is I think Jed will trade some of these guys. But you could trade some of those guys, but you still have to clear the deck to get these major league offensive players to come in and have room to play. Paredes is a third, Dansby, Nico, Bush, Bellinger, PCA, Happ, Seiya, Amaya. That's your team. We just named them all. So, how do you open up a slot there? Do you say to Amaya, hey, we still just don't believe in you yet and go all in for a catcher? I don't think they're going to do that. Do they just double down and say, hey, we're going to really take these assets and turn them into an incredible Seattle Mariners-like starting rotation? Okay, great. Is Bush a guy that maybe a team values and you say, man, it hurts us to part ways with Bush, but now we could go trade for Vlad Guerrero or we could do something else? Or do they get a big break? Bellinger opts out. That opens it. Because don't forget, they still got to open up a spot for Matt Shaw. I've been seeing these social media things about, hey, well, Matt Shaw could just play the wisdom role next year. That's not how you develop a player like Matt Shaw. He's either playing daily and facing righty and lefties, or he's in Iowa.
Absolutely. No, that's not even a conversation piece. I don't see why one of these dudes would fulfill a bench role at all, especially given how benches are used now and or how Craig Counsell apparently uses a bench, or at least used it in 2024.
Can I do a trade proposal for you?
And by the way, I'm not the only guys that I'm excited. I feel like Owen Casey. Like I'm not like, oh, I hope Cody Bellinger opts out so Owen Casey can get a shot.
No.
Or Kevin Alcantara, respectfully, which is why the Bellinger thing, I just honestly, I err on the side of him opting in. I do.
I want Bellinger to opt out so we have that money and that trade flexibility. We can go trade for a guy like Vlad Guerrero, move someone else to the outfield.
Be trade flexibility because there's no other free agent targets that work.
Yeah, but maybe then it helps you put money towards a starting pitcher, so then you don't have to spend it on a starter. You have other stuff available. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Like we don't know. What if
that's true?
What if there's an unhappy outfielder or a team getting ready to part ways with a guy that's better than Bellinger that we just haven't spoke a ton about? Who knows? You know what I mean?
That's true.
We don't know that. Or you trade a guy like Michael Bush, and then Bellinger moves to first base, and then you have right field to go fill. Who knows?
Well, Bush, Horner, and Paredes are all on the board, in my opinion.
They should be.
They're the only ones you can trade.
Here's what I think the Cubs should do. I think they should go sign a free agent pitcher, whether it's Max Fried, Eovaldi. I don't think they're going to go as high as Burns, but who knows? And then you trade a couple of those prospects that we mentioned and one of the major leaguers for one of those Mariners starters, say George Kirby. So now your rotation is stacked, and then you can see what you want to do from there. Maybe Bellinger opts in, so then maybe that's all you do. But then maybe Bellinger opts out, you can go get somebody else. I don't know.
What about the Marlins pitchers? Do any of those guys intrigue you?
Yeah, but a lot of them been hurt. Okay. Their main guys.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think they're all somewhat intriguing, but the big thing Jed has to do is, instead of celebrating the assets that he's created, he's got to figure out a way to make them turn into wins on the baseball field with this current team. And that's why my hindsight glasses are kind of like, gosh, that Paredes trade, how much better would it have been if we just could have been moved on from Morel, and then Matt Shaw could just slide in and play third, so then that spot's taken care of, and then we have more things to deal with. I don't know. That's where I'm at. I think the biggest thing I learned from the press conference was that Jed Hoyer wants Cody Bellinger to opt out. Him citing that his own player has a lot of options, that doesn't happen. So he wants that for a reason, and we're going to see. What's the deadline on that after the World Series?
Yeah, it's within 5 days.
So we're about a month away.
The Arizona Fall League starts Monday, goes all the way till mid-November. Wow. Ballesteros is by far the top player representing the Cubs. He's only 20 years young. But also I wanted to mention that Ben Cowles, one of the two players with Jack Neely acquired from Mark Leiter in July.
Yeah, he was injured.
Cowles, while Neely reached the majors, Cowles never played following the trade because only a couple days before he hurt his wrist and missed the rest of the year. Cowles is playing in the fall league, though, and he's playing in it for the second straight year after leading all shortstops in OPS last fall. So maybe we could keep tabs on him as well. When we start our grade and review series, I do think it's going to be important to address like the peak ahead as well. And I do think leading off with like a Horner and then snowballing into Bush and Paredes, guys who
could go.
status is more unknown. I think we should pursue that first.
Agree.
And then get into like the Haps and Suzuki's. By the way, Bruce Levine hinted on Saturday on his show on 670 The Score. And I didn't tweet about it because I don't want the Cubs Twitter to yell at me anymore, including the prospect people. But I'll say it on our show. And by the way, I'm going to do that all offseason. I'm not tweeting anything. All the kernels will be here. The Cubs did go to Ian Happ in July about waiving his no trade clause. And he just said, yeah, I'm not doing it.
I'm sure. Oh yeah. And we discussed that a bit. We did on this show.
Yeah.
We had heard that he kind of made it real public. And so it just became a non-story because he can. I'm telling you, I think the Cubs know. I think they want to upgrade in certain spots, but because of Jed Hoyer's poor decision making, they have a ton of flexibility in the minor leagues, but they're stuck with this mediocre roster. You're not supposed to have all these untouchables with an 83 win club.
That's a great way to sum it all up. Coming up next, the playoffs are well underway and they're pretty good too. Stay tuned. Today's episode is brought to you by Arena Club. For most of us that like collecting cards, the idea of spending $2,000 or more on a top rookie card just isn't in the cards. I love collecting, but that's some serious money to drop. Thanks to slab packs from arenaclub.com, now it's possible to score gem mints for a fraction of the retail price. Every card that I listed was hit from last week's Arena Club slab pack drop. Arena Club is only repack that provides real value, a complete view of all possible cards, and clear hit rates for each one. Plus, they're revolutionizing the repack game with transparency. After all your pulls are revealed, they'll immediately be placed in your showroom for safekeeping, selling, trading, or auction. Plus, the Arena Club grading process is accurate, fast, and transparent with a full grade rationale provided, an explanation of how your card was scored, which is really, really nice. Whether you're buying, selling, trading, or displaying, Arena Club is the card collecting platform you have to check out. Right now, Locked On Cubs listeners get 10% off your first slab pack or card purchase by going to arenaclub.com/LockedOnMLB and by using code LockedOnMLB. That's arenaclub.com/LockedOnMLB and use code LockedOnMLB for 10% off your first purchase at Arena Club. Okay, we have a division series right now of Tigers, Guardians, Royals, Yankees, Mets, Phillies, Padres, Dodgers, all four solid matchups following most notably two things last week. One, the Tigers sweep of the Astros and the Mets 2-1 upending the Brewers as the Brewers season lasted, I'm going to say it, 4 more days than any other team. This time of year, Sam, I'm reminded that playoff baseball just hits different on how, really, I know it's hard for us to admit sometimes, but, the regular season games, they just don't, in the individual contest, they just don't matter as much. And these playoff games are just on another level in terms of energy, atmosphere, and really just the baseball part of it. How have you enjoyed this so far? Because I feel like baseball is having a nice moment right now.
I've enjoyed it a lot. I'm ready for, if it happens, I have a very, very good idea to help the Major League Baseball playoffs that I'd like to premiere on the show, but I need for the DS to end first because you know this about me, Matt. What I love about sports, I like when the best teams win and I like when the best teams are playing.
Mm.
And, last year, this is, I think, year 3 of this 3-game series into the DS format. And the better teams in the DS, when I say better teams, I mean the better regular season teams, were 3-5 coming into this year. They were 1-3 last year. And I fundamentally believe it makes a whole lot of sense because those teams, those 1 and 2 seeds, are getting 6 days off. You don't get 6 straight days off for 162 straight games, but then you get 6 days off while your opponent is playing these highly intense 3-game series. It's not like football or basketball. Baseball doesn't take a lot out of you physically. You don't need that much rest. So I'm waiting for that idea. But on Saturday, 3 of the 4 better teams won. So they're off to a 1-0 start. Looks like the Mets right now are up 2-0 in the score of game 2, trying to go up 2-0 in the series. But that just kind of seems like one of those things that's nothing to do with the system. The Mets are just red hot. They just seem like a team of destiny right now. So I'm really curious to see if the better teams can win, because I just think it's better for baseball. I think these 85, 86 win teams making the World Series influences our owner not to spend the appropriate amount of money because he thinks, let's just win 87 and get hot in the playoffs. It's bad for the sport. Or if that's how it's going to be, just play less games then. Don't play all 162. But
Right.
But so far, it's been awesome. The Mets were a part of 2 of the better playoff games or playoff type games I had ever seen. The Monday Braves game was crazy to get in. And then the comeback against Devin Williams and the Brewers was just insane. I was watching that with my family. And boy, the minute that Devin Williams walked Lindor, you just kind of felt it coming. And and then a lot of divisional matchups. Shohei Ohtani makes his playoff debut Saturday night. Looks like deja vu for the Dodgers. They're struggling. 3-run homer flips that game. Really excited to watch these games, and it's good. It's. I agree with you. It feels. I'm not a huge fan of the format, but right now it feels really good. And it's fun for baseball, and it doesn't hurt that the Mets are playing really well. The Yankees are in it. The Dodgers are in it. That always helps the sport.
Yeah, I got to take this all in again in terms of like where I'm at on the format, because it's clear that, now the best teams may not be advancing as far as they can, or you might even say like should.
Yeah.
I'm torn about this, and so I need to get back to you on that. But
well, let's see what happens though. It's only year 3, and so far so good. And to be fair, this year there isn't really any elite teams, right? The Dodgers are a 98-win team, but they're extremely flawed with their pitching. The Phillies limped at the end of the year. It was more last year where you had that amazing Braves team and that 100-win Dodger team both get knocked out in 4 games, and you're like, wait, what's going on here? Is that what's good for the sport? But we'll see this year. So far, it's tough. I just don't want to see, like, with all due respect, I just didn't want to see like the Royals and Tigers, and I don't want to see that in the ALCS. Those are not the 2 best teams. They're not the 2 best teams in the American League. They have 85 and 86 wins respectively.
Well, and while there's no elite teams, there is the best players on the planet are still playing.
Sure.
And so I do want to see Yankees Dodgers.
Yeah.
Although I have to say Yankees Mets would be pretty crazy.
Yeah, I'm in my dad reminded me before the Brewers Mets series, remember 1969, but he doesn't realize that was, almost 30 years before I was born. So
I would remember that.
So he said, because his whole thing is everyone's rooting against the Brewers. The Mets were just as big, if not a bigger rival to the Cubs a long, long time ago. I just wasn't around. I just wasn't around for that. So, but I'm in on this Mets team. They're fun to watch. We'll see what happens. This game too. We'll see if Philly could come back. Will be a real interesting story. But I'm like you said, I'm locked in on what Aaron Judge, Juan Soto, and Shohei Ohtani are doing, because those guys having massive postseasons could elevate this sport that we love so much.
Did you have any Brewers elimination joy like other Cubs fans, or?
Nah, they finished 11 games ahead of us. I'll have joy when we're better than they are.
Okay. Because the Bob Uecker clip was pretty.
No, I mean, it was a terrible loss. I sure didn't feel for them by any means. I wasn't disappointed. But it just shows you it's a 3-game series. You have a dynamite closer. He doesn't have it one day. It's curtains. The margin for error. I saw some stat, Matt, that how like the NBA, you play a best of 7, and most of the time the better team wins. There was some sort of analytic.
Oh yeah, why is that?
Well, because the NBA basketball has so much less randomness over 7 games, right? Like,
Okay.
and you only play 82 as opposed to 162.
Got it.
You know what I mean? So it's like I saw some stat where if baseball wanted to have that formula where the
It's got
better
to be in the 30s, right?
it was best of 75.
Uh, come on. I would have guessed 30 on the dot.
So, you know what I mean? You're not going to it's always going to
Best
be
of 30.
it's always going to be imperfect.
Exactly.
And you got to make your money. But I'll tell you, if these underdogs come back to win, let's say they go 2-2, remind me, I got a brilliant idea to make the playoffs better. And it's not extreme at all, folks. I've thought long and hard about this while I was shooting hoops. It's a good one. Call me Sammy Manfred.
And should we focus more on the journey of following a team every day and experiencing it and realizing, okay, only one team does hoist the trophy. And,
That's right.
And it might be just a random team.
Well, this is actually one of the times my historical references hold weight. But I believe we haven't had back-to-back World Series champs since the Clinton administration, or at least feeding into the Bush. It was the Yankees 99-2000. Right?
Oh yeah, no, that was a while ago. Yes,
99-2000.
Yeah, Clinton.
It's really, really hard to win. World Series. It's just the playoffs are random. I mean, Mariano Rivera had some bad moments. Remember 2004?
If the Brewers fans are still listening, and I would say go support Chuck on Locked On Brewers. I will just want to play this.
Well, New York down. They did it. And the crew will have it end here tonight.
Really a crushing end to what was a fabulous season for the Milwaukee Brewers.
I'm telling you, that one had some sting on it.
Coming up next, a couple new hires, really big hires by the Cardinals and the Reds. Stay tuned. Today's episode is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.yeah, with hotels, bed and breakfast, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more on Booking.com. You might just find your perfect stay, even in your baseball rival city during the postseason. Maybe it's time to taste test your baseball competition stadium cuisine. Luckily, on Booking.com, you can find the stadium stay that's just right for you. With Booking.com's wide variety of choices across the U.S., you can go incognito to all your baseball rival cities. Right now, the division series are in Cleveland, New York, Philly, and Los Angeles. No matter what team you are rooting for this postseason, Booking.com can make you a fan of any city around the country, even your baseball rivals city. Booking.com, Booking.yeah.
This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you could start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Folks, the Bears just dismantled the Panthers on the lakefront. They head now to London, which I believe, according to the betting circus, will be circuits will be a neutral field game. That line hasn't come out yet. I'm going to do a rare thing. I'm going to predict the line on that. I think it's going to be Bears -2 on a neutral field against the 1-4 Jaguars. We'll check back on that. It'll be an interesting game to talk about. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook.
All right, last segment here. We're just going to go around the NL Central. And then later this week, we will dig even deeper into the NL Central, what it means for the Cubs and all 5 teams moving forward in 2025 and beyond. First of all, Chaim Bloom was named the president of baseball ops for the Cardinals.
Yeah.
As they have signaled a transition time for their franchise. John Mozeliak is going to be there this year as well, but it's more of a succession plan with Bloom starting to really dig his heels into that team and help rebuild. Remember, Bloom did rebuild the Red Sox farm, but he was kicked out a year ago for Craig Breslow, who was with the Cubs. And then I believe this was Thursday evening, Wednesday or Thursday evening.
Thursday.
After retiring 1 year ago, Terry Francona was hired by the Reds, Sam. Yeah, 2 big hires here.
Yeah, don't know as much about the former, but I'll speak more on the latter. Tito Francona wins everywhere he goes.
Totally.
He took a year off. The Reds had a really rough year this year, but they were beat up by a lot of injuries. So it'll be really interesting. And we'll talk more about this, but the NL Central is not going to get any easier. This Brewers team, this Jack Cichurio looks like a real type of generational type player. Their young talent's really good. They're good every year. Obviously, the Cubs are going to be in win now mode. The Pirates were a better team than the record showed. Bednar, as we talked about, really struggled. They got good young players. And now the Reds hiring Terry Francona. That signals to the rest of the division that we're coming for this division next year as well. So the Cubs need to get better, and they need to get better quickly.
Okay. That's a good message. We'll package that and send it out to all the season.
Put that on a T-shirt.
Oh, maybe this week we get the Ricketts email.
Well, it's about that time.
Yeah. There was no Pirates news this week. And then finally in the NL Central, if you didn't hear, the Brewers were eliminated from the postseason. Thank you so much for checking out.
Ricketts might tell us, last year Ricketts told us he loved what the job Ross did. 3 days later, he was out of a job.
Of Locked On Cubs. He goes, that was so weird. He goes 20 to 30 minutes. We'll give you all things Cubs with a laugh or two along the way. Be sure to hit subscribe on YouTube as we make the push to 11,000 subs. That's going to happen this week. Smash the like button for the algorithm and leave a 5-star review on Apple, Spotify, and everywhere you get your podcast. All right, fun Sunday for Monday show. They're always packed, and that proved to be true this past 32 minutes. He's Sam Olber. I'm Matt Cozy. This is Locked On Cubs.
They did it.